In the Jewish tradition, there is a midrash, an interpretation of the Torah, the sacred text about twilight. It points to a spiritual practice essential for Unitarian Universalists. The midrash has to do with what happened at the waning of the light, the period when it was no longer day but not yet night. We are at the darkening of the year. Now, I'm not sure about you, but for me, this time of year prompts me to search for solace in the magic moments that exist at the edge of darkness. There's something special about the liminal time that occurs right before we experience, as we sang about in our hymn, the dark of winter that is filled with quiet calm. Liminal time is what exists between what has been and what is not yet. Susan Frederick Gray, the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, reminds us. We are living in one now. We Unitarian Universalists know that we are always in one. Of our tradition, our president has said, we are a religious people of imagination and possibility. We are a living tradition. We know that revelation is not sealed. We look to the past for wisdom. There is richness to be found in the memories of yesterday. And we have faith that the future will bring the unexpected. Let us now approach the Midrash. It concerns a story that is likely familiar. You probably know about the myth of the earth's creation found in the book of Genesis. There it is imagined that God birthed the world in 6 days. On the first day, she brought forth from her own sacred depths the heavens and the earth. And then she split them in two so that there might be light, which she called day, and darkness, which she named night. She divided the heavens again. There was the sky, and there was the water. That was the second day. Then she pulled the water this way and pushed it that way. She reached down, and from there, from the very depths, she brought forth the land, and that was the third day. Then she gathered the light of the heavens into grand orbs, the sun, the moon, the stars, all the celestial bodies. Between them was infinite darkness, pitch blackness punctured by brilliance. She set the cosmos in motion. There was morning and there was evening. The fourth day was finished. Ordinary time had arrived. The fifth day saw God bring all manner of swimming and flying things, critters great and small of the sea and sky, into existence. The sixth day was when she completed the natural order. The beasts who dwell upon the land were fashioned. The text in the English translation I use contains a sparse imagination and names cattle, creeping things, and wild beasts of every kind. So too came the construction of the first humans. In our ancestors' bodies, God blew the blessing of breath and the complexity of consciousness. Then the sun set. Heaven and earth and everything else had been created. After the sixth night, on the seventh day, it is told that God ceased work and blessed the day as a day of rest. And so she rested. I like to picture her with a tall glass of lemonade and a good novel by the seaside. That much you might well remember, except for the lemonade, of course. I made that bit up. But here comes the Midrash. It concerns the waning of the light, that liminal time between when the sun vanishes under the horizon and the moon and the stars claim the sky for themselves. Then in the twilight, right after the sixth day, but before the sixth night, God had finished everything that follows the discoverable laws of the universe. And then right there at the edge of the darkness, that's when she created the miracles. The rabbis of old did not agree precisely upon what the miracles were. One produced a catalog of 10. Some added another 3. Others included an additional 4th. Rabbi Jeremiah ben Eliezer spoke of 8 stipulations, impossible stories found in the biblical text that were created at that time. It's unclear whether that list was supposed to be a supplement or a replacement for the earlier ones. Nor is it certain that the miracles were thought of as entirely supernatural. One set of things created in the twilight includes the rainbow. An interpretation of the interpretation, a midrash on the midrash, if you will, is that the miracles also included those things in the natural universe that humanity has not yet discovered or found a use for, but whose existence and utility will be revealed in the fullness of time. Miracles are mysteries. They are possibilities that exist beyond possibility. So perhaps it is inevitable that the rabbis could not agree upon the nature or the number of the miracles, but that is not the important part of the interpretation. No, I want to direct our attention elsewhere. Where do you think it belongs? I suggest we focus on the very idea of twilight, the liminal time, the waning of the light when we are caught between this day and the next, when the night is not yet, but the day is no longer. It is on the cusp, at the transitory juncture, in the liminal time when unfathomable possibility is to be found. That's one of the teachings of the Midrash. There are times when solid, knowable things occur. In the myth, the earth came into being, the heavens are born, the natural order is to be found. And then there are times when, to invoke Karl Marx, all that is solid melts into air, and what had been impossible becomes possible. A miracle occurs, and what you never thought would happen, happens. Is this not the pattern for most of our lives? Day follows day, night comes after night. Each has their predictable rhythm. Weekdays, I wake up, I get the boys their breakfast, I walk my son to school and return home to brew a pot of tea. Lately, it's been Earl Grey mixed with blue and corn flowers and served with a dash of sugar and a splash of milk. After my own breakfast and a few minutes with a magazine, it's time to get on my bike and ride to the office. And so it continues, a predictable pattern that ends when I click off the light. Is it the same for you? Do most of the hours of your life contain a certain sequence? First this, and then that. And then something sometimes happens. I catch an unexpected spark of beauty. The moon comes down, as our poem relates. Or I have a conversation that I did not anticipate. Or something shifts, and something that I had not imagined occurs, and suddenly my life becomes different than it was before. Is this not a familiar story for you? The midrash, the twilight, the waning of the light, these are reminders that even if there is a particular fixity to our world and our lives upon this planet, there are always those periods in between when possibilities beyond the possible open up. God, the biblical myth insists, wove miracles into the very fabric of the universe. Recalling this is a core Unitarian Universalist spiritual practice. Susan Frederick Gray encourages us to remember it when she spoke of the liminal time in which we find ourselves now. The world as we knew it is passing away. All things have gone strange, she told us at our General Assembly this past summer. When all things grow strange, she urged us to recall, we Unitarian Universalists trust the dawning future and welcome it not with fear. We do not necessarily believe that what comes next will be better, but we understand, in her words, that each new day, whether the metaphorical coming era or the literal daylight, contains within it the unforeseen. It is a Unitarian Universalist spiritual practice to remember that revelation is not sealed. The future can be different than the past. No, let me restate that. The future will be different than the past. At this time of year, as one 12-month terminates and another one commences, as we experience the waning of the light, we are invited to open ourselves to this spiritual practice. The rhythms and stories of some of the winter holidays encourage us to sit in the liminal time of possibility. Some neo-pagans and most Christians observe Advent. We lit an Advent wreath to mark the Sunday before the arrival of the winter solstice and Christmas. Each is a holiday which, in the Unitarian Universalist understanding, is conceived of as a day of possibility. The solstice turns one solar year to the next. In our winter solstice ritual, we metaphorically burn away the old and welcome the new. Let go of the fixity of the past and summon the possibility of the future. Christmas, for the majority of Unitarian Universalists, is a time to recall the possibility that exists within each human life. In traditional Unitarian Christianity, Jesus is not imagined to have been the unique child of the divine. Instead, he was someone who woke up and uncovered the divine spark that lay within. The purpose of our religious communion in this understanding is to help each other uncover that spark and encourage each other to let it burn and shine ever more brightly. Every year in our Christmas Eve service, we hear Sophia Lyon-Fawza's words, "Each night a child is born is a holy night." Parents sitting beside their children's cribs feel glory in the sight of new life beginning. They ask, where and how will this new life end? Or will it ever end? The waning of the light. The month of December is a time where the very cycles of nature invite us to open ourselves to the liminal. The old year is passing. The new year has not yet arrived. We are in between. And in the in-between, we find miracles. Here, too, there is something to be found in the story of Hanukkah. It's a relatively minor Jewish holiday that has taken on greater importance in our pluralistic society. For some in the Jewish community, it is a counter to Christmas, not in a theological sense, but in a cultural one. For others, it remains a holiday that is but a later insertion into a holy structure of reality grounded in the holy days. None of the rabbis lists the miracles contained within the Hanukkah story in their litanies of various miracles God created at the beginning of time. But they are a miracle of light nonetheless. You may know the story. In its abbreviated form, it recounts a time when there was not enough sanctified oil in the temple to keep the holy fires lit. The temple had been defiled and the sacred oil was desecrated. Upon the temple's rededication, one tiny vial of pure oil was found. It was only enough to last one night. It was going to take 8 more nights for more sanctified oil to be made. The miracle is that the oil lasted for 8 whole nights until pure new oil could be brought into the temple. So Hanukkah is another holiday of waiting in the liminal time for new possibility to occur. It's not always comfortable to be in a liminal time, to live in the waning of the light. I imagine the discomfort of the temple priests as they prayed for the oil to last not one night, but 8, and gently, carefully nursed the flame so that it would linger until more fuel arrived. I suspect that they had faith that somehow the oil would endure. And I also assume that they were filled with doubts that the possibility that they sought would come into being. Here, again, is our spiritual practice. We are called to embrace the obvious. There will be a new dawn. The future will be different from the past. And we are called to be honest about the unease we feel about the passing away of what has been and the arrival of what will be. Let me invite you to consider how the spiritual practice can work for us as Unitarian Universalists on 3 levels: the personal, the congregational, and the societal. The personal. It is one of my privileges as your minister to officiate memorial services. Such rites of passage touch upon the very depths of what it means to be a religious community. They are rituals in which we recall what binds us together as human beings and as a congregation. They are times when the love that we have for each other is most palpable. And there are times when we share vivid stories about the acts of love that make life holy. The tenderness of parents towards children, beauty of friendship, the commitment of partnership, the transformative power of justice, and the strength of fellowship are all often invoked as part of the transformative power of love in such rituals. Memorial services are liminal times. For the living, they mark an ending and a beginning. They are an opportunity to sit in the tension between what was the life that we had with our loved one who is now gone and what will be, our life in the future. It's not always an easy thing to do, but we Unitarian Universalists do it with the knowledge that life continues. Not a particular life, but all life. And that in the continuation of life comes new dawns and the constancy of love. Perhaps this is an overly grim note for a Sunday morning sermon. So let me just say this to you. When you next find yourself in a liminal time, when all that is solid has melted into air, when whatever you expected to occur in your life has not occurred, when you're facing a moment of despair, pause. Breathe. And then recall the teaching that revelation is not sealed. There is room for miracles, for possibilities beyond possibility in our earthly lives. Say to yourself or say out loud, another day will dawn. Another day will dawn. It will bring its own possibilities. It might be that they feel like blessings, and they might feel otherwise. Perhaps the pattern of life will continue as it is, or perhaps it will change. But either way, another day will dawn, and it will bring a future that has been different than the past. The spirit is found in Eloise Bibb Thompson's poem, Ode to the Sun. There we find the poet reflecting under a sunless sky about many heartfelt sighs, many piercing cries, and many deeds of woe. But then comes the day star, and she declares, "Shine on, O glorious sun. Another day has dawned." The congregational. We reflect the very newness of dawn, the unfixedness of the future within the practices of our congregation. We intentionally open our life together to the liminal. We've been doing this together, you and I, minister and congregation, over the last few years as I've served first as your interim and now developmental minister. It is our collective task at this time to be together in the possibility of twilight and share life together between your last settled ministry and your next settled minister. As part of living in this liminal time, this time of possibility, together we've been exploring a series of questions about the future of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston. Perhaps the most central of these simply has been, what kind of church do we want to become? There is a sense within that question that the congregation of the future will be different than the one of the past. That sense is further spelled out in one of the items that you assigned yourselves in your effort to answer the question. And that is to, in your words, craft a mission, vision, and covenant that are common knowledge and informed decision-making. Embedded within the question you asked yourself and the charge you gave yourself is the very idea that revelation is not sealed. Rather than assuming that the purpose of the congregation will be the same that it was yesterday, or that your purpose will be the same for all time, you're living into the truth that what this community is called to be today and do today is different from what it was called to be and do 100 years ago. This week and next, the board's Mission, Vision, and Covenant Committee will be sharing with you their draft statements. You can find them outside in the table in the Channing Hall, or you'll get an email about them later this week to look at the text. We hope to vote on them next month. But before you read the text, I hope to encourage you to look at them in the spirit of twilight. They are not yet finished. Let the committee know what you think of them. Do they speak to your heart? Do they embody your aspirations for this community? Are they documents that you think can guide your congregational life in the next years? The congregational practice of reimagining vision, mission, and covenant points to the final aspects of a spiritual practice of opening ourselves up to liminal time. On a societal level, when we embrace the truth that the future will be different from the past, we again acknowledge that revelation is not sealed. There are still miracles, still possibilities that exist beyond the possible to come. It is of the greatest human follies to take culture or society as fixed. It is core to Unitarian Universalist practice to recognize that both are fluid. A cursory glance at history will reveal that there have been many ways of being and doing over the span of human existence. There is a beautiful diversity of religions. There are thousands of languages. Everything is changing all the time. Words that are used by one generation can have a different meaning for the next. Unitarian Universalists proclaim this reality in the core of our theology. The sentiment is expressed in a statement made more than 100 years ago by the Universalist minister L.B. Fisher. Our theological ancestor wrote, "Universalists are often asked to tell where they stand. The only true answer to give to this question is that we do not stand at all. We move." We move. Here again, I invite you to return to the liminal. We are in a liminal season when one year fades to the next. At such a time, our tradition challenges us to open ourselves to what is to come. There will be a new dawn. There will be a new year. And in the coming day and in the arriving year, there will be possibilities beyond what we think of as possible. For revelation is not sealed. In the twilight, in the time between time, in the waning of the light, and at the crowning of the year, may we remember that there remain miracles. That it might be so, I invite the congregation to say Amen.